Right now, many of us are just thinking about surviving, trying to get by, living one day at a time. We are tired, worn out, and stuck. But what if God called us to more? What if God wants us to thrive in the midst of the chaos? Jesus said, "Remain in me and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. Yes, I am the vine. You are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit." Are you tired of just surviving? Tired of going through the motions? Are you ready to grow like never before? It's time to thrive.
Have you ever noticed how many people hate their jobs, or they dread going to their jobs, or they have a poor attitude when it comes to their job? Anna Robiton wrote an article called "Why So Many Americans Hate Their Jobs." And in this article it says of the country's approximately 100 million full-time employees, 51% aren't engaged at work, meaning they feel no real connection to their jobs. Thus they tend to do the bare minimum. Another 16% are actively disengaged. They resent their jobs, they tend to gripe to coworkers, and it really brings down office morale. This article goes on to say that the reason most people who are not happy at their jobs is because of their boss, that many bosses are not equipped to manage people. And this may be true, but I wonder what responsibility we have when it comes to our job. Pastor Derwin Gray says that if you're a follower of Jesus and you're in the 51% not engaged at work and doing the bare minimum and not actively engaged, how do you think this affects your soul and your ability to develop skills to be successful at your job? How does it limit your ability to reach people at your job with the gospel? And think about this for a second. How we do our jobs has a kingdom impact. How we do our jobs has a kingdom impact. Your job is not just about collecting a paycheck. It's bigger than that. Colossians 3:23 says, "Work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than people." Whatever your job is, maybe you go into an office, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a janitor, whatever your job is, maybe your job is being a student right now. Or maybe your job, you're investing into your children. Or maybe you're a grandparent and right now your job is to be the best grandparent that you possibly can be. Whatever your job is, you are to do it as you're working for the Lord. It's not about a paycheck, it's not about pleasing other people, but it's about pleasing God, and we're supposed to work with all of our hearts to please God as we work. We've been in a series called Thrive. And today we're talking about how to thrive in your work. And I just want to give you one key. There's several keys that can probably help you thrive in your work, but I want you to kind of think about this one key, and I think it flows from Colossians 3:23. If you want to thrive in your work, it starts with your attitude. In your sermon notes, I've provided a little attitude quiz, and this might be helpful for you, and I would encourage you to take some time to discuss it with someone. Attitude is simply one of those things that we don't think a whole lot about, but I think that we should spend a lot more time thinking and talking about it. Your attitude pretty much governs everything about you. You go to work one day with a lousy attitude, and guess what? Chances are you're going to have a lousy day. If you go to work with a great attitude, chances are you're going to have a great day. It makes sense for us to pay attention to and adjust our attitudes. It's been said a bad attitude is like a flat tire. If you don't change it, you'll never go anywhere. Billy Cox said, "The two things in life that you're in total control over are your attitude and your effort." And so we have a choice when it comes to our attitude. Writing from a prison cell in Rome, the Apostle Paul wrote the attitude of a Christian, wrote about the attitude that a Christian should have. Philippians 1:27 says, "Whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. And then whether I come to see you or only hear about you, in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in the one Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel. That whatever happens is a reference to whether Paul can come to visit the Philippians or not. No matter what happens, there might be disruptions, there might be frustrations, there might be difficulties. No matter what happens, we are to respond, and Paul was encouraging everyone to respond with a Christ-like attitude. Later on in Philippians 2:5, he says, your attitude should be the same as Jesus Christ. That's pretty challenging when we think about it, because there's days that it's hard for me to have a good attitude. I get frustrated, or certain things aggravate me. And I'm not sure that my attitude always reflects Christ, but Paul right here challenges us to have that type of attitude. He's talking about having humility and selflessness in our relationships. He encourages us in Ephesians 5:1 to be imitators of Christ as dearly beloved children. That we're to reflect Christ in everything we do, especially in our jobs, that we should model Christ in our behavior. Now, some of you are saying, you don't understand my situation. The people I work with are terrible. My boss is unreasonable. My job, the things I have to do, it's just, it's consuming. It's hard for me to do. And you're expecting me to have a good attitude. And what I'd say to you is, God might be closing this season of your life. He might be saying, hey, it's time to look for a new job that you can find some more happiness in. But he also might be saying, he might be asking you to pray for your coworkers. He might be asking you to pray for your boss. He might be asking you to bloom where you're planted at. He may be encouraging you that while you fast this week, because that's the spiritual discipline that we've been encouraging this past month, is one time during lunch to fast, and we want you to pray, and we want you to really be connected to Christ, because we think that's one of the keys to thriving. Maybe during your fasting time, you could be praying for your coworkers, and you could be praying for your boss, and praying as you talk to customers. Maybe God's asking you if you're a thermometer or a thermostat. A thermometer reflects the temperature in the environment, adjusting to the room. A thermostat initiates action to change the temperature in the environment. Now, you might be asking, well, how do I become more like a thermostat than a thermometer? Because I think it's really tempting for a lot of us that if we're in a bad environment, for us to have a poor attitude. But how do we become more like a thermostat? How do we have a better attitude? And maybe some of you are thinking right now, well, Ronnie, what do you know about thriving in a job? You get to work with Richard Hamilton and Jesus Castillo, and you get to work with Celeste and a bunch of wonderful people. You don't understand my job. You don't understand what I'm going through. And so I thought it would be helpful for me to bring in a guest. Seth Asbury is one of our elders, and he works in a very stressful job. And he's going to share with us some tips on how to thrive in your job. And if you listen closely, I think you'll hear some of those same tips that leads you back to having an attitude of Christ that will help you become more of a thermostat. Hey CHCC, I'm here with Seth Asbury. He's one of our elders. I think you've been an elder for about 4 years. And Seth, I like to say that he's one of our best dressed elders, and especially his shoe game. If you ever see Seth, chances are you're going to see some nice shoes, and so I know that he has quite the collection. You'll have to ask him about it sometime. But he's also married to a beautiful young woman, Brooke. You guys have 2 boys, ages or grades.
Evan is a 4th grader and Keegan is a preschooler.
And I love his boys, especially Keegan. He cracks me up. I kind of feel like he's just kind of a storm that just kind of moves in and just kind of takes over. And he just kind of, his smile and his laughter just tugs at my heart. Seth, you also work at Trinity University.
That's right. I work at Trinity University. It's a small school just north of downtown. And I'm the Associate Director of Athletics. We compete in the NCAA Division III level. We have 18 varsity sports. We're 500 athletes. And we're going to play all 18 this spring semester as COVID-19 has restricted us to only practices this fall semester. So it should be a fun semester.
So basically, you're at every event. You have to be around your coaches, athletes, facilities, you name it. And so when we're talking today, we're talking about how to thrive in our jobs. And of course, your job is very stressful at times. It's difficult, whether it be things breaking down or whether it be the people portion of that. We know it's difficult, but what are some keys to thriving in your job? What's some things that you might be able to share with us this morning that might be able to help us? Because I know there's some people out there that they have really difficult jobs and they're being pulled in a lot of different directions.
Sure. A lot of prayer. And I pray for guidance, wisdom, strength, humility. That's a big one. I've always been reminded. I had a minister when I was in college. He would always remind us, before we would head out the door, he would ask us, or tell us and ask us a question. You may be the only Bible that anyone reads today. What version are you? That always struck a chord. And now, when I listen, I speak to him every once in a while now, and go out and be Jesus today. And so that's always been helpful to me. And as you mentioned, I get to interact with a lot of different people on campus, with a lot of different needs, and so that can be challenging at times. People are challenging at times.
So we want to pray. I mean, that's one of the key things to thriving in our jobs, praying that God opens up opportunities, praying for wisdom, guidance. I know you mentioned this also, is having humility, and that's really big. And kind of dig in to that a little bit more. What does it mean to be humble in our jobs? Does that mean for people to step on top of you, to be taken advantage of? Like when we say that word humility, and for us to have humility in our jobs, what does that mean?
No, not necessarily to be stepped on, but recognizing the role that you have at your job. I've got a story to share. Right after college, I worked in a city parks and recreation facility, and my boss there said, remember that we work while other people play. And I work in athletics. It's a lot of fun, and some days, we think a major problem is a huge problem, but in reality, we're not doctors. We're not performing surgery, life-saving surgery every day like doctors do. So you have to have a little sense of humor about that. And then in staying humble is key in knowing that, I'm working for the Lord, and we're all interacting with different people, again, with different needs. And, it was a few years ago, we had a major $1 million project that we were working on at facilities, and I was, on the front line of that and kind of feeling pretty important about myself. And, at the same time, there's some stresses at home with my mom had been diagnosed with cancer, and that was really the first time I'd been affected by cancer. I know everyone is affected by cancer, but that was the first time for me. And then having a newborn at the house, it was just a little craziness, right? And so, and I, not being humble, would lash out in anger sometimes at different people just because of the stress that was weighing down on me. And fortunately I had good people surrounding me that said, hey, you need to settle down here a little bit. If you're going to continue acting like this, you're not going to be working here anymore. And so that was really an eye-opening experience for me. Like, oh wait, am I really acting this way? I mean, that's not right, and I'm not exhibiting Christ-like behavior. And so from that moment forward, it's again every day is a gift, and every day is we try to have fun each day, and remember, I'm not the most important person here. I'm here to serve and help.
So having that same attitude of Christ, not thinking that we're the most important, that the world revolves around us. I think that's a key when we're working in our jobs, is realizing, one, that we reflect Christ, and the way that we reflect Christ is having that servant's attitude. In a culture that's pretty difficult, because it says promote yourself and toot your own horn and walk over everyone. But the Bible actually calls us to do something opposite, and that's to serve. I mean, to pick up the towel and basin, just like what Jesus did by washing the disciples' feet. Something else that you mentioned that really stuck out to me is actually kind of walking away from the situation and realize, okay, is it as bad as what I really think it is? I mean, and sometimes I think we get worked up and we make things into mountains that are really molehills. And a lot of times they're just first world problems. And we have all of this anxiety, and we put all this stress on us. But if we'll just simply walk away and kind of take a deep breath, go into silence, that can be really helpful. I mean, it can really put things in perspective. And then another thing that you said that I think is really, really important is we need people around us, that when we're getting too high and mighty, when we're maybe lashing out because we're stressed out or we have all of these things going on, we need people in our life that can speak to us, that can speak to our hearts and say, hey, Seth, I mean, this isn't normally how you act. What's going on? Let's talk about it. And so I would encourage you to find some people in your life that can speak into it, that can just kind of tell you how it is, and that they love you enough and they care about you enough to do that. And so just some of the keys, just to kind of recap. 1, we want to pray. So important. 2, we want to have a humble heart. We want to have that humility. 3, we want to put some people in our life that can speak to it, that can hold us accountable, that can encourage us, that can pray for us. And then also the last one that I would say is, again, step away when you're stressed out and in the midst of the chaos, and just look at it from maybe a different view. Take a deep breath, pray, get away from the situation. I thank you for joining us. I thank Seth for dropping some nuggets of wisdom on us. Again, Seth is there for you. He cares about you. He's one of our shepherds of our flock.